Hi, and welcome. We are Ray Fletcher and Javier Perales, and we are with Purpose Lab. We've been doing strategic management with organizations since 15 plus years. And the main idea today, Ray, is that we are going to present to you an overview of what our program entitles, what our full content actually presents, and we also want to give you kind of a brief summary of all the different stages that we navigate through in our strategic roadmap.
Yeah, we've constructed this comprehensive, like you said, strategic roadmap that's supported through a bunch of materials that is all covered kind of in our extensive course. However, today we want to introduce you guys to this concept, introduce you guys to this roadmap. So let's dive in.
Let's dive in. So we anticipate that this probably close to an hour program is going to help you to receive some of this value, some of these concepts that you're going to be able to go out and apply. And if you're interested, please reach out. We're always happy to hear from you. So today, Ray, we are going to be talking about a little bit about what strategic management is. Then we're going to dive into some of the elements that make for an effective strategy. We're going to be presenting this roadmap, which is basically, well, what do I do? What are the steps that I need to take if I need to go through the different phases for strategic management? And finally, we're also going to be presenting you with a tool that we call the Strategic Barometer that will give you an idea of how you are in terms of the strategic management maturity for yourself and your organization.
And for those of us who aren't as experienced in strategic management, this is going to clear up a lot of the confusion around it. We like to relate strategic management to this sort of journey. Imagine yourself embarking on this hike up a summit, up a mountain. And this is exactly how we like to kind of use this analogy to effectively communicate what this process looks like, right? We have this goal in mind, and that's this top of the mountain. Now, beyond the top of the mountain, we might have this star out in the distance, and we call that our North Star. It's kind of what gives us purpose. It's what guides us. But the question is, what do I need to embark on this journey, and how do I begin to do that?
Right, there are so many elements, as you were saying, that you can relate to, and this is why we love this analogy. So you have that purpose that's out there, that North Star that you just mentioned, that perhaps is always going to be guiding you, even though you never actually get to catch it. And as you're moving towards that summit, that some people like to call that's their vision. That is, if they close their eyes and say, that's where I want to get, that's the summit of that mountain. And that the North Star is always going to be there guiding you. But then you're starting from somewhere. So that is your base comp. That is your current status. You need to do some analysis to know what that is. And as you're getting out of that base camp and starting to move up, then there are some elements that you need to take into account. You need to account for the fact that even though you might have a plan and even though you might have this map and the roads that you're wanting to take, you need to be aware of the fact that climate can change, conditions can change, the terrain itself can change, and we need to be able to be flexible to keep kind of this fluid essence of what it is, even if we're still having that goal that is still up there. As we get higher, perhaps our panoramic view will be different, and we'll determine, does it still make sense to climb this particular summit? Do we want to change our vision? Do we want to change our way to a new summit right now? So as you mentioned, Ray, there are so many elements that we can relate to in this journey or hike into the mountains that we like to use it almost like an opening metaphor for this strategic management roadmap.
Yeah, it's one of those requirements of strategic management in the 21st century. We have to have a strategy that's flexible enough for us to change course when we need to, which is why this analogy hits home so well, because it provides us that clear picture as to what does it look like. At the end of the day, it's a journey. Things change. And maybe when I reach the top of that summit, maybe I've reached my vision, maybe I look out to the distance and I see other mountains that are worth climbing. And so this is the point of strategic management, that we're kind of always in this environment of change. And so that might mean that our strategy too has to change. It's not like it used to be before, where maybe I have a plan and I stick to it no matter what. It's now this changing dynamic.
Right, and also like every stage of the journey has its own charm to it. As you're planning, as you're there, as all this emotion is building up, then of course you have to enjoy the journey. You have to enjoy the fact that you're actually getting there, regardless of how long it actually takes. And then of course when you reach that summit and you look out and you see, well, this is a beautiful sight, a beautiful view. Every one of this single stage of the journey is out there for us to enjoy. So as we are able to picture this and more or less take it into our business scenarios, let's take a look at what strategic management is for some big names out there. For example, for Michael Porter, the essence of strategy is about change. It's about choosing to perform your tasks differently than your rivals, adding value in such a way that it is perceived as superior by the public who is receiving it. So Michael Porter is all about a competitive advantage, is about being different from the rest of them, and is about making the right choices for that. Then we also have, for example, the case of Mr. Arthur Thompson, Ray.
Yeah, and he says that, what an organization's strategy consists of is establishing a direction. It's about establishing where that top of the mountain is and what does it look like, right? And of course, connecting that gap. Sure, I'm on base camp and I know where I want to go. What does it look like when I connect the two?
Exactly. So it is about having this clear direction. It's about being able to compete successfully, to grow the benefits for the organization. Now, strategy is also, in the words of Marcel Planels and Nell Mooney, is making decisions that set a path and have long-term impact. So we've seen it's about the choices, it's about the direction, it's about the decisions that you take during the path. And then we have Fred Davis, which I believe is one of the most comprehensive definitions, because it talks about strategic management as the art of science of formulating, implementing, and assessing multidisciplinary decisions that allow a company to achieve its objective.
So we have a bunch of these definitions that we can use to describe what strategic management is. For us, we provide this holistic approach to it. It's not just about this. I'm glad you brought up that definition, right? It's not just about formulating it, right? And kind of having it live in a piece of paper, maybe live on a desk somewhere, live on a nice poster. This is about looking for ways to formulate it and then effectively looking for ways to carry it out. And that takes decision making.
Absolutely. So quite often strategic management is confused, or strategy itself is just confused with strategic planning, which is an important part, but it's also only one piece of it. It would be like saying that you are building everything in your base camp, but then you never take a step out of it to start in that journey, that hike up in the mountain, right? So we want to have, as you're saying, we want to have every single element. We want to have everything that goes into the planning. Then we also want to have everything that goes into the execution of the plan. And then we also want to have that governance and that adaptation of that plan as we're moving in the mountain, because we need to be able to, or we need to be ready for our environment. So the type of decisions, or the different decisions that we are able to make as an organization could lead you in different paths. I mean, you could be talking about increasing market share. You could be talking about merging with some competitors. We could be building about strengthening or building additional resources or your supply network. All of these decisions come from somewhere. The idea is that any one of these decisions need to be properly aligned with what we're ultimately looking for as an organization.
Yeah, it's not just about laying out a goal and saying, okay, everyone, let's go to it. No, it's about this careful process. And like you mentioned, where we take the time to carefully plan through different factors, right? We don't just want to plan without taking a look at ourselves, taking a look around us. We want to make sure that there is this alignment from where we are standing at right now and where we want to go. So then this brings up this question, well, what makes an effective strategy? And we've consolidated 5 points that make an effective strategy. Number one, it adds value to the customer, right? At the end of the day, who we're looking to add value is to our customers. Secondly, it has to be different. It has to be unique. This is where we start diving into this idea of competitive advantage. Your strategy should be looking at building that competitive advantage.
Absolutely. And as you're building this competitive advantage, this will have an influence in your customer or your client's decision to work with you, to buy your product or service, to use it, to actually perceive you as superior to your competition. Now, if we're doing this correctly, if we're putting together this competitive advantage, and if we're doing it in a way that we are making it sustainable, then it is also hard to imitate by the competition. And very importantly, in this short minutes, we've already mentioned the importance of being able to adjust and to keep it flexible as we move through the path. So basically, Ray, we could be talking about 3 different almost tests that we could be performing on our strategy to validate and make sure that we have an effective strategy. So one of them would be, is our strategy able to be adjusted and to properly fit the different moments in which we are living? So that would be the first one. The second one, is our strategy actually bringing in a competitive advantage for our competition. And the third one is our strategy actually bringing on the right performance. So we have like kind of that fit test, we have that competitive advantage test, and we have that performance test, that all of them together, all three, when you put them together, they will tell you your strategy is being an effective one.
Yeah, and now, how do we do that? What kind of elements make up an effective strategy? There are different ways in which we can arrive to all those different ways in which we make an effective strategy, right? Number one is we have to have this comprehensive method in order to find where we can be competitive. And for that, we have to take a look at ourselves internally. Not only internally, but we have to take a look at ourselves externally. What are others doing? What's the competition looking like? What does the political environment look like? What does the environmental look like? All these different factors play into different ways that we can leverage these opportunities to create this competitive advantage. Secondly, we need a way to instill innovation into our strategy. Why? Because our strategy is ever evolving. It should always be flexible. It should always be changing. And we should be always adding that value. And that might require us to think of ways to deliver that value in new and effective and fresh ways.
Right, which means that strategy will need creativity, right? So as we are facing these new challenges, as we're looking to reach the strategic objectives that we set out to do as an organization, we will be having this bunch of how might we questions in terms of saying how might we achieve this or that, how might we reach this particular point in time, taking into consideration that this is our reality, that this has been our historic performance, that these are some of our limiting beliefs. So we are going to be needing some creativity. We will be able to put together some design thinking principles, some creative leadership principles here as well. And in the end of the day, Ray, what we want to put together is we want to have a good and smart strategy together with proper execution. When you have those two together, you have good management. Once I heard it said, and I think it's very true, that it's better to have a so-so plan with very good execution than to have a perfect plan with a poor execution, because you actually need both in order for you to actually get you to that summit.
That's right, Howell. 50% of the work lies in that formulation side, and then the other 50% lies on that execution side. And finding that balance is critical. Most organizations today find themselves on that formulation side, but like you said, they might not be at that point where they're ready to kind of move out of base camp and start to embark on their hike. Whether that's due to some fears, whether that's due to this unpreparedness, whatever it may be, we have to look for ways to become better at that execution part. Now, we've already kind of touched on some benefits, but what are these benefits that make up a good, effective strategy? Well, number one, we're able to achieve alignment. We're able to achieve this sense of direction, this collective goal in which all of the organization can say, you know what, that's the top of the mountain. We're all looking up at it, and we all want to go there. Secondly, it improves performance, right? Once we can create that alignment, there's no confusion as to where we're supposed to go. So performance is clear, right? We know what good performance looks like. It's reaching our strategic objectives, but we need to be clear about what those are.
Absolutely. So as we're clear about those strategic objectives that we're trying to reach, then it also makes it easier for us to continue to monitor where are we? Where are we in terms of our process? What do we need to take on the next step to make sure that we're doing a good use of our resources? If we all know what's the path that we're going to be following, it should also reduce this change anxiety, and therefore it will reduce resistance to change in general, right? So you talked about alignment. In terms of alignment, understanding commitment to the strategy is very important. It will ultimately help us all have aligned efforts within the organization. And what I find very interesting, Ray, is that as individuals in business, when we ask the different groups that we teach, that we train, that we work with, when we ask them about strategic management benefits, or even when we ask them about some of the strategic management reasons for failure, we kind of all already know many of this, right? So we are able to put together this list and say, well, these are some of the things that you will be positively getting when you are using or doing the right strategic management approach. And these are some of the reasons why it might fail. Perhaps because you're having a poor communication, because you're having this lack of alignment, because perhaps you're lacking follow-up, because perhaps you're not having the right resources. So the key here is that if we already know that having a clear strategy is paramount in order for us to understand what the priorities of the organization are. And then we also know what some of the reasons for failing in doing that also is. Then we can embark in this journey with a little bit more reliability in our own ability to know what's happening and what we need to do. Now, what we've done in Purpose Lab is we've kind of curated the model based on all the different options and tools and frameworks that are out there. We know it can get a pretty confusing, and we consider it ourselves. I always like to use this example. Let's say like we are almost like museum curators, right? So there are all these great pieces of art out there, but if you just look at them in isolation, then you're not precisely sure how they fit with the rest of the pieces of art. So what we've done is we've kind of identified principles put out by some of the great minds out there, some of the great tools that are out there, and we've kind of placed them in this 5 stages or 5 module approach to strategic management.
Yeah, and with our roadmap, we're taking those things that you talked about right now, those things that might lead to failure of a strategic plan, and we look for ways to minimize them as much as possible while also leveraging all those benefits, leveraging all the fruit that comes from a strategic plan. So with our model, like you said, has been carefully curated. We select the right amounts of tools, the right tools that might lead you down that path of effectively communicating and effectively identifying what your strategic plan is going to look like. And it starts by what we call this outer ring. And here we're asking, what's my foundation?
Exactly. So in this foundation, what you're doing is you're preparing your strategic process to be custom made to your needs. Every organization is different. Every organization is living in a different moment. And we want to make sure that we're using the right set of tools, that we're setting the right framework, that we're setting the right structure for us to be able to govern our strategy when the time comes. That all happens here at the very beginning. It is as if you were going to start building something. The first thing that you need to do is you want to know what you're building, right? So as you have this structure that needs to be tailor-made for your organization, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in just a minute. Then we look into the core of the model, the center circle, which is why. And it is also interesting to know that this outer circle and inner circle, many times we work them in parallel. They're like steps 1 and 2, but it's not like we can say that one of them actually goes always before the other one, right? You need to work both of them at the beginning. So as you're working in this why read, this is what you'll find many concepts that perhaps our audience is already familiar with. Perhaps they've heard about the purpose, the vision, the mission, the values, but we want to make sure that we don't always, we don't only stick to those elements that form part of the philosophy of the organization, but that we actually take those philosophical elements and we're able to translate them into a clear vision or a clear vision of the future, and that we have some tools to actually start building the future from there, and don't stay only at the romantic area of the philosophical parts of the vision, mission, purpose, values, etc.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about this model is that we recognize that not all organizations are the same, and we've gotten the opportunity to work with organizations of all shapes and sizes. And so with this model, you start with this outside and you start to carefully kind of understand what kind of framework, what kind of strategic model works best for my organization. And like you said, it's that middle one as well, that DNA. These two things, this outer ring and that inner circle, that's unique to your organization, and it's going to begin to guide the rest of the process. And so from there, we start to travel where we are in between this outer circle and that inner circle. And you'll see these 3 arrows that kind of form a cycle here. And we have to start first with this analysis phase. It's important that we understand and we beg the question, hey, where are we? We want to assess the challenges of the organizations, assess the restrictions, assess our resources, our capabilities, and we take a deep dive into understanding and answering that question of where are we? Because that's going to then dictate this next question of, hey, what do we need to do, right? In that first part, in that analysis phase, we need to have a consensus of our as-is state. Where are we right now? And then that's going to start to help us go into this formulation phase, which is what we call it. And this is where we answer the question of what to do. We've identified where we are. What do we need to do? What are those kind of projects that are going to help us accomplish the goals that we set out to achieve? And then lastly, our third and final phase there is this formulation / kind of execution phase. And this is where we ask ourselves, how do we do it? Sure, we've got this plan. How does it look like now? Taking it down to the floor, how do we make it tactical, and how do we then execute on it?
Actually take it in and walk with it. So you've done the plan, now you need to work with that plan. So with this, and you very probably call this the cycle, right? Because it is actually a cycle. And as you're executing, as you're implementing all these ideas, the strategies that you formulated earlier, now you need to constantly continue to assess once again, where are we? Is this taking us where we want to be? And if there is a need, then how we adapt our strategies, how do we adapt our projects in order for them to take us to where we still want to go, or do we still want to get there? So this is like a continuous process that will continue to perform. We are not going to have a lot of time to talk about all the tools and all the principles that go behind each one of these 5 modules. For that, we invite you, if you want to take a closer look at that, for that, we invite you to follow us in our full training program. But what we're going to be doing throughout the next minutes, Ray, is we're going to try to give you a short summary of some of the tools that go into each one of these 5 stages.